good. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to miss you. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, well, good morning all. I've got a script to read for the virtual meeting protocol. Before we begin, I'd like to go through our meeting protocol. As a reminder, your mic should be on mute if you're not speaking. Please raise your hand to get my attention and I'll nod to acknowledge. If you have asked a question and then have a follow-up question, please mute your mic in between questions. I'll come back to you to see if you have a follow-up question before moving on to the next person. If you need to step away from the meeting for a moment, please turn off your camera. This will let me know you've stepped away, although I know you can still hear what is happening in the meeting. Okay, Joyce, would you do a roll call, please?
Dave Talley,
Here.
Tammy McDonald, Deborah Manzo, Michael Dixon,
Here.
Mark Bymaster,
Here.
Kathleen Weigel, and Leandre Camel.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay. I think as tradition goes, we'll go around the room and make introductions, and we'll start down at this end with you, please.
Blair Littlejohn from the Office of General Counsel.
Brett Friedman, partner with RSM.
Chantel Knowles, manager with RSM.
Leandre Camel, City Manager, South Bay.
And I want to interrupt just a second. Welcome. This is your first meeting, and we're really pleased to have you with us.
Glad to be here.
Go ahead, Mark.
Mark Bymaster with Nolan Holt Minor.
Teresa Michael, Inspector General.
Dave Talley. Okay.
Oscar Estefan, Inspector General's Office.
Susie K with the Inspector General's office.
Great. Okay, take a minute and look over.
We just rounded out.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
Mike Burke, CFO.
Nancy Samuels, Accounting Director.
I apologize, group to the left. I didn't mean to neglect you. Okay, I'll accept a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve. I'll second.
All right. All in favor? All opposed? Passed unanimously. Now take a minute and look at the minutes of our last meeting, which was on September 28th. Take a few minutes to review that, and after review, I'll accept a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
We have a motion.
Second. I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Passed unanimously. Public comments. Hearing none, we'll move on. And for those of you that haven't had a chance to meet Teresa Michael, she is dynamite. And it's a pleasure to work with her, and it's a pleasure to have you here to our first in-person meeting. So I'm going to turn the meeting over to you for your IT update.
Thank you very much. What is the name of your policy revisions? It's the one that's highlighted. There we go. First of all, I'm Teresa Michael, and it's nice to finally meet some of the people here in person versus the virtual. Is everybody able to hear me okay with the mask? All right. I would like to first speak a little bit about some of the things that we're doing in the Inspector General's office, some of the things that we're working on, some initiatives. Of course, as everybody knows, we are doing the internal funds audits, which are going on. My team has miraculously gotten through half of the schools. Just unbelievable work, and that's going out and doing the work. That's not sitting at home. They're actually going out to the schools. Investigations, as you see, that we've had quite a few investigations that are done. We have quite a few going on as well. Some of the different things that I'm working towards is some issues involving centralized reporting, trying to gather so that incidents are not reported to so many different entities, but kind of see if we can get a funnel process. That's something that's in the works. It's going to be happening hopefully in the next couple of months. But one of the things that I did want to talk about was the change in the proposed changes to the IG policy that we have in process right now. Most of the changes will not affect audit. And let's see if we can get the PowerPoint. Okay. Essentially, the changes that we're making are four in total, that essentially covering the educational requirement for staff, as far as what type of complaints are required to be reported to the Inspector General, and to try to get better alignment with the other best practices. And as you can see here, one of the issues that I wanted to point out is the Inspector General is assigned 4 policies that we own in our office. That is the Inspector General policy, the Audit Committee policy, the fraud policy, and the whistleblower policy. Currently, the fraud policy and the Inspector General policy aren't aligned. So I'm trying to make the changes so that we can align those two. There's also some other issues that have been brought forward that are just not in industry best practices that we have required on policy, and that's essentially one of the biggest issues that we have to take care of. Next slide. Again, there are 12 district policies that cover different areas that require staff to report to different people. Some of them are duplicative, some of them are inconsistent. So I can't necessarily work on everybody else's policies, but I can at least get our policies aligned so that we're consistent and there's no confusion. We also have an issue of the mandating posting of final investigative reports on the website that has caused a lot of disruption and a lot of additional issues and it doesn't really help. There's no positive gain that I could see. And lastly, people aren't familiar with the IG policy. There's not an educational requirement, so that's something we're adding. Next. As you can see here, this is the different policies that are out that require reporting. And I basically looked at all of them, and depending on what the person feels is the character or the category of their complaint or issue, they'll look at a policy, and then they decide from there if they have to report, who they report it to, and if there's a training requirement. The only policy in which you have mandatory reporting, the reports are posted online, and all of those is the fraud policy, which I think is a pretty good overarching policy. However, if you look at the others, it's, all over the board as to who actually gets the reporting. Next. This is how complaints can come in, incidents can come in. I know it's kind of hard to read up there. But an incident comes in, or an incident occurs, and the first thing is the people have to decide who they're going to report it to, and if they're going to report it. Is it mandatory? Is it criminal? Fear of retaliation? And which policy? Next, if the complainant decides they want to report it to, they've got to figure out who they should report it to. And right now, there are 8 different entities that can accept a complaint. So you can imagine that somebody could complain to 3 different entities, and all 3 entities could be doing an audit or review, and that's an issue. There's also an issue as to the jurisdiction and who has the manpower to do some of these things. So if the people decide that they want to report it to the IG's office, because it's one of our areas that's covered by policy, we have 7 different ways in which they can report to us. From there, we assess. Every incident, every complaint that comes into the Inspector General's office is first assessed for whistleblower status, whether somebody requests it or not. We have a third-party administered hotline which prevents anybody or any issues of that we are not taking reports, or we're only reporting things that we want to report on, or looking at things we want to look at. It's in the system, it's done, you can make an anonymous report, which in today's society you can understand why somebody would want to do that. Once we get the report, we look at it, we look at it for four criteria. One, is it a whistleblower? Do we have jurisdiction? Is it criminal? And what policy does it cover? And that's where we decide if we are going to keep an incident or an allegation, or if we're going to refer it out to one of the other entities, such as equal employment opportunity. Is it a criminal matter? Is it a matter that would be best handled by the charter schools? And we do that assignment out. A lot of times when we get a complaint, we don't have enough information. It's just a preliminary, we just have very basic information. And we will do what we call a preliminary inquiry. And at that point, we will decide if there's more enough for us to move forward, or maybe this is something that is just not in our area. Although sometimes we have a preliminary inquiry and it's an anonymous complaint, and we can never get any follow-up, and it kind of just dies on the vine because we don't have enough information. Again, if it's something, though, that does fall within our jurisdiction, something that rises to the level of what we would do an investigation on, we will accept it, and it goes on to the investigation. From there, we finish the report, and then when the report is finished, it's open for public record. Right now, our policy requires all investigations to report it on the website, and that is it has a very chilling effect, and it can be very disruptive to the agency, and it also can be very harmful for the subjects, especially if they're cleared. If they're found innocent of something, they have had no wrongdoing, we're still putting that report on the website. There's also issues where if somebody, say that you're an employee and you witness your coworker doing something, well, we interview you, that interview is now going to be on the website. So you can understand how somebody might be a little hesitant to talk to us if they know that everything automatically is going to be put on the website. So one of the things that I want to look at is removing the requirement to post investigations on the website. All right, next. Before I made these changes, I reached out to all of the inspector generals that are across the nation that are within a school district. There's not that many. I've received written responses from 2 of them on the survey, and the other ones I looked at their websites to see what they had as far as mandatory reporting, compelling testimony, jurisdictional issues, and publishing reports. None of them published their investigations on the website. I then looked at the Florida state IGs, as well as state and local level IGs. And from what I was able to find, state inspector generals do not put their investigations on the website either. The county does that, but they are not an internal investigative agency. They're an external entity. So they have a little bit different of what they look at. Most of the time it's contract fraud, those type of issues. You're not talking about employee misconduct issues, which can be very sensitive in nature. You can imagine that if you have somebody that has been sexually harassed, or if there's some type of discrimination or just unfair treatment, you may not necessarily want your testimony of that, or on the web. And those are things that the county IG does not look at. So I also looked at, is there a requirement to post investigative reports? There's no requirement. Audits are typically reported on websites because that is not done of an individual. It's more of a systemic issue. And that's a very common thing to do. State IGs do it, local IGs do it, federal IGs, they all put audits on the website, and I don't see any negative effect from doing that. Next. All right, first change. Again, I want to align the fraud policy with our ethics policy, and that's just adding that any known ethical misconduct should be reported to the IG. Just adding that section into the IG policy that's already stated in the fraud policy. Next. The second change is just adding that staff should cooperate fully be truthful and accurate with their information, and they should not have it be retaliated against. I think that's kind of common sense, but believe it or not, it should be in the policy. Next. All right, adding an educational requirement. A lot of people don't know what the IG's office does, what our functions are, and what our limits are. And I believe that having a requirement that staff be familiar with it and trained on it annually is a good thing. We could do it virtually. It's not going to be cost prohibitive or shouldn't be any problem as far as taxing anybody. But right now, the IG policy is silent on that. There's no requirement to be trained on it, to have knowledge of it. Next. And then the last is the posting of the investigations on the website. Again, the investigations, once they're completed, are open to public record. We're not changing that at all. We're just not automatically posting them on the website. Next. This is the timeline that we have in process for when you're trying to change a policy. And as you can see right now, I'm at the point where we do the workshop with the audit committee. Currently, the general counsel's office has approved it for legal sufficiency. Blair was a great help on this, and his whole office. I've also met with the board members informally, as well as executive, the cabinet, and all of them, pretty much are on agreement. There's still some concerns about the, whether or not we should be looking at ethical issues in the IG's office and adding the requirement to report ethical issues to the IG's office. There's some concern that employee relations should be handling just those. I don't know quite how we, how we can look at our things with whistleblower, fraud, and everything else if you don't also consider ethics, since that is kind of falling into unethical behavior. So we're here at the presentation. I have all the policies are out right now to formally, as far as the policy revision process, it has to be sent out to everybody and they have to give a written response. I'm waiting for those right now. On the input today from everybody here, if you're in agreement, or if you have no concerns, then I would move forward with the policy revision process. But I wanted to present this to the workshop and see, at the audit committee and a workshop, to see if there is anything that I need to change, something you don't agree with. Next. Questions? I know that's
Any
quite a
questions?
bit all at
Questions
once.
or comments from the committee? Michael?
I'm thinking.
Welcome,
And
Deborah.
Yeah, thank you. Do I need to push this or you can hear? Okay. Yeah, a lot of information, and I do have a couple questions, and
Sure.
I'm trying to gather my thoughts, okay? And first of all, this is the first time I've seen you face to face, so congratulations.
Thank you,
okay?
thank you.
So do we know why the policy had stated that the reports were to be placed on the website, all reports?
I believe that is taken from the audit side. Originally, the office was an internal audit, and all audits are posted. I believe that when we switched from an internal audit office to a IG's office, I don't think and initially investigations didn't even identify people. I think they kind of stood mute on the identity of the individuals. Now you have people's names in there. I think it just wasn't a complete understanding of investigations in the IG field.
Okay. Yeah, I
'cause
don't
I've never
have a
seen
problem
that.
with annual audits. I think that's what, like you said, the county, just following suit there. Don't have a problem with change 1 or 2. On change 3 with the education requirements and educating supervisors and directors, is that a one-time? Is that an annual?
Annually. I would be looking at that annually.
Okay, and I think right now, the county inspector generals or commissioner of ethics is, an initial and then every 3-year, review. So would you consider something like
yes.
that? Because as I have said on this board, the training that is required of all individuals that are employed throughout the school district is a lot, you know. So I would probably support an annual and then, you know, a every 3-year
Update, refresher?
Right. Yes. And as far as the ethical issues, to me, those are two separate things. I know Leandre and I both serve on the County Commission on Ethics, one of the committees for the ordinance language and change. But I feel that those are separate, but, you know, if there's an ethical issue that turns into an action that's normally handled under the Inspector General's office, then I certainly understand that you know, that's my initial thinking, and, you know, unless someone else has some other thoughts there. And who does handle the ethical issues here in the school district?
HR, employee relations.
Okay. And
Or-
someone here from employee relations?
No, or depending on the category of unethical, if it is there's different area, like if it's an EEO unethic issue, then it goes to the EEO officer.
Got it.
If it is somebody hacked into the computer or misused the computer, then it goes to the chief information officer. If it's a media, something that could garner media attention, it goes to the media officer, and then it also goes to the superintendent's office and maybe the CEO or CAO. So there's a lot of different people that, you know, look at that. Now, reporting it and us investigating it are two separate things. You may report things, and I would have to say, I'd say maybe 70%, would you say, is referred out?
Yes.
70% of the complaints that we receive do not rise to the level or are not within the area of what an inspector general would investigate. So we track it, we refer it to whatever entity would normally handle that, like HR or EO, or if it was like a charter school, you know, we may send it to the charter school. If it's just strictly a management issue, something that doesn't reach that level, we send it to them.
Got it. And also with the county's Commission on Ethics, there are certain items, well, I guess people can report, anyone, you know, school district or anyone else can report to the Commission on Ethics, you know, at the county level.
The commission
Just
on
my initial thoughts.
Yeah,
Is, you know, Inspector General, just do, you know, focus on, and believe me, I know you all have enough to focus on with just what happens in the Inspector General's office. So, is that your question on the ethical issues? Okay. Thank you.
No, thank you. And with the Commission on Ethics, and the same thing is with the State Ethics Commission, when you have like an elected officer, you know, if you have an issue like that, that goes to the, you know, goes to the Commission on Ethics. They make the determination. We're not talking about something that is an elected official, those type of things.
I understand.
But intentional misconduct is what we look at. If you knowingly are violating a policy, and it's usually for some benefit or to avoid some type of action, then those are the areas that we would look at.
And you normally, that would be something that rise to the level of an Inspector General
Right.
Action, or however, you know.
Correct.
Investigation or whatever. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Clark, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I do. For the posting of the reports, the investigative reports online, I understand the concerns of posting the whole report, but maybe a suggestion is that you might want to maybe post the title of the reports so people know they exist, and then they would have to request the full report instead of leaving it blank on the website to where the public wouldn't know they exist at all.
We could definitely, that's definitely a thought. One of the things I did forget to mention, our annual report, which is published, has a brief synopsis of every investigation in that annual report. So there is something that is posted on the website that will list And it's just a very high-level synopsis. It
Yeah,
doesn't give
yeah.
individual names. But that part
Okay.
is out there, and that, no change in that.
Okay.
Okay. Leandre?
Debbie touched on a few of the things that I wanted to ask about. However, I think the outcome only, that the investigation that is ongoing should be, just the outcome of the investigation is posted versus we have this investigation and now it's all posted on the website. There was one other thing. It just jumped out of my head again. I didn't write it down. But that was the one other thing I would just, the outcome of the investigation is the only thing that's posted, not so much that the investigation is happening, because it's just professionally, it's one of those things. Training, yes, the training is every 3 years for ethics training. You get it, and most people are professional, and they are going to get an abundance of training annually from some entity. So we don't have to add an additional layer, then let's not do so.
Okay,
Okay. That's all I have.
thank
Kathy
you.
Weigel, do you have any questions or comments? You're on mute. Okay, unmute and try again. I'm sorry, bear with me a minute. Okay, Kathy, try one more time.
Can you hear me now?
No.
No? It's funny, James Campbell says he can hear me.
Looks like the
Shirley can
speaker
hear
on the
me.
computer might be muted.
No. They can hear me, some of the people can hear me that are remote.
Yeah.
Shirley can hear me, James can hear me.
Oh, no, this one has to be muted. Hold on. Sorry, guys.
Online.
Yeah, people online can hear us.
I can just tell you I'm good. Everything's good.
He's shaking your head. Evidently, they can hear her on there, because James
You're
was
trying.
giving a thumbs up.
Yeah, I got it, I'm good.
Not yet.
So,
Nothing?
Mr. Chair, I do remember that other question.
Get the children to do this. They're coming. She said she's good, but.
Bear with us,
All the
Kathy.
other computers, but not this one.
I'm fine. Whenever you tell me you can hear me, that's great.
I'll hear you in the closet.
Yeah, you can hear it in there. So they're gonna try to feed it in here. Sorry, we did say glitches were happening.
Mr. Kamel remembered his question.
Mr. Chair, I remember my question. Is it possible for us to get a statement from personnel relations as to how those, how that becomes an IG concern? Because the matters are handled by personnel. I don't recall the name you just used.
Employee relations.
Employee relations.
Right.
If we can get a statement, or they could come to the next meeting, and we can have a dual conversation regarding IG and employee relations and how those are tracked.
Sure, sure. They also have they have the policy right now, and they will be giving written responses to it, any concerns. I had one meeting with them yesterday, and it's ongoing as far as working through the different layers and coming to an understanding of who has what in what areas. So we're also working on that as well.
Thank you.
Okay, Kathy, you want to try one last time?
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Or no?
yes.
Oh, great. I guess my only concern is that it, and I'm appreciative that you're trying to streamline it. It's that principals know exactly where they have to go with information. back in the dark ages when I was a principal, we made all of our calls through Jim Kelly's office, which was school police, and then they determined how to parcel it out. So I just want to make sure that no matter how we do it, that it's very clear so the principals know exactly where to go and they're not stuck in the middle because they called one number and didn't call the other.
And that is one of the issues that we're looking at is as far as a centralized reporting, where all reports would come into one centralized entity, and then from there, they would be sent out to whoever is in their jurisdiction. Because it's very confusing, and depending on when you have an issue, when an employee or a citizen or a parent sees an issue, it almost depends on which policy they pick up as to who they're going to report it to, because they think, well, okay, maybe this isn't fraud. A lot of times people will, say it's sexual harassment, bullying, but it doesn't necessarily fall within the legal definition. So there's a lot of confusion. And as I said, with that one graph, you can see there's 12 different policies that require reporting, and sometimes they're different people. And, our fraud policy says, that you're supposed to report fraud and any unethical actions to the Inspector General. But the ethics policy says you're supposed to report it to the HR. So it's, trying to get everything to match up is like a moving target.
Well, I appreciate anything you can do to help them. Just lightens the load, because right now they've got enough to do. So if they know that they can make one call and then leave it to whomever is handling it up in the district and then determine who comes out to manage it, whatever the problem may be. But thank you for that. Thank you.
I agree. That is a problem, and it is concerning because, a lot of times people don't know who to call. And sometimes they call multiple entities. So we have multiple entities looking at something. If an allegation is one of the things, if it's reported to the Inspector General's office and it qualifies for whistleblower, we can't confirm or even let anybody know that we're doing that investigation. So that's a problem where even if we sat down collectively, all of the units that are involved and said, okay, I'm going to take this, you take this. As the IG, if we have a whistleblower, I can't acknowledge that we have that. I can't tell everybody, no, we're doing a whistleblower. That just kind of blows the whole whistleblower portion of it. So that's why I was looking at as far as having our third-party administered hotline handle those complaints coming in, because we could take the whistleblower off immediately and not have to worry about that issue. But again, that's the centralized reporting process that's going to take a while to work on. But that is something that we are trying to work on right now.
Thank you very much. I know it's well appreciated.
Thank you, Kathy. Are there any other questions or comments? I personally had gone through these changes with Teresa earlier in the day, and I personally feel that they're right on target and they're things that need to be recommended to go on to the board, I guess first, to the workshop?
Right.
And then for their approval. So if there are no further comments, I'd entertain a motion to accept and approve these. Were there 4 changes?
There's 4.
Correct? 4 changes to go to the board.
I move. Weigel.
Okay.
I'll second.
All right, discussion? Debbie?
Discussion, just on that one item for number 3 on the education requirements. When we are approving this, are we approving an annual, or are we just approving that education?
It just, I didn't specify because I wanted to make sure that I was not interfering with any other trainings that were going on. We can, adjust as far as making it specific.
Okay, so these are general, and then this, okay, so
Right.
I can support that then.
Right,
Thank
right.
you.
This was a workshop for us to kind of work through things and discuss everything and get an idea to make sure that we're going on the right track and, for your all's approval to move forward. But we still have a lot of stakeholders that we're receiving input from, and the board, of course, is who makes the ultimate decision on all these changes.
Okay.
Okay, any further comments? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All in favor, all opposed, passed unanimously. Before we go on to the audit reports, Mark, if you would, there's a sign-in sheet there. If you would sign that and pass that around so Joyce can have some idea of who's here. Thank you. Now we'll go on to the audit reports, and Teresa, we'll start with the special review of Pahokee Middle Senior High School.
All right. Thank you very much. Our audit supervisor, Susie K, will be presenting.
Good morning, everyone. Morning. So I have two different reports. They're both related to Pahokee. I'm going to just do them one at a time. The first one is the one that is entitled Special Review of Missing Money at Pahokee Middle Senior High. This was a referral from the accounting department that we received. Because of this referral, we went out, we performed an unannounced cash count. And from that unannounced cash count, we discovered there was discrepancies between what the drop safe log indicated should be in the safe and what was in the safe. The ultimate outcome of that cash count plus our further analysis was that we had about $20,000 missing from that school for that incident. We reported it with school police, and they took over the investigation, and we continued to assist them with the financial analysis. Sorry. And then, in addition to that, we also did a full analysis of their revenue collections for that year and found some small minor non-compliances with policy as well. So, in addition to the missing money, we had a situation where the school treasurer, in addition to the school secretary, had full access to the drop safe, which is not in compliance with our district's policies. We also had a situation of just the drop safe log not being filled out, people just putting money in the safe without putting it on the drop safe log. We also had the end of the year, in a normal year, not last year, but in a normal year, school administration collects the teachers' copies of their monies collected reports and their official receipts. And we discovered that not only had about, 41% had not actually turned them in, that's what had turned in. They also had given direction to submit them to the treasurer, which is, again, not in compliance with district policy. And then the treasurer herself was being very slow in getting money to the bank. So these are the issues that we found for that one school. Does anyone have any questions regarding this report?
No questions.
I do. Compliance thing, right?
This one was
They're not compliance with the procedures.
compliance, and then I forgot to mention that the school treasurer has been charged with theft, with grand theft on this one.
$20,000 is missing.
So a little more than non-compliance on this one.
20,000 is missing? I thought it was in the drawer or something.
No, the 20,000 was missing in addition to what we found in the drawer.
Ah, sorry, I read it wrong then.
Okay. Mark, did you have?
Yeah, I have, I think it's in this report.
They're very similar, so you might have them mixed up.
The one thing that I found weird was that both schools are commingled in the same bank account.
This is the one-off in the district. We had, the school started life way back when as a 6 through 12 Pahokee Middle Senior. Then, Mike, how long ago was it? Like 15 years ago? We built the second campus right next door. So they now have their own campuses. Sometimes they have their own principals. Sometimes they have one principal between the two, which they're at again right now. But they have never added a treasurer or a bank account for the middle school. So we have one bank account for the two schools and one treasurer that's shared between the two campuses.
Is anything going to be addressed about, because I can see where you can have this one treasurer, but I believe you should have two different bank accounts. So all the funds are totally separate from school to school instead of commingling them in one bank account. Because it'll be harder to trace any misgivings if they're all commingled into one account.
Okay, that,
Michael?
Yeah, I think part of the challenge with that is the school is only recognized as one school by the state of
Okay.
Florida. It has one school ID number, and it's basically one large school, kind of spread across 2 campuses.
Okay.
yeah, I understand your concern. We fight with that. Any other questions?
Are there any further questions or comments?
How long is this treasurer in that position?
She'd been there, don't hold me to this, but somewhere in about 2 to 3 years? Yeah, about 2 to 3 years.
Now this might be moving forward on the second report. Is the same people involved in both of these reports?
No, there's a little bit of overlap, but no.
Okay.
The treasurer, when this was discovered, the treasurer was reassigned to a different position while the investigation's taking place.
I have a question. Is there normally one person that's designated as a drop-safe log custodian? Is there a certain position? Is it normally?
Yes, and that in this school's situation, they have 2 drop-safe log custodians, one on each campus. Most of the activity that's described in the report occurred on the senior side, on the senior high school side. So, but yes.
I have one more comment. I don't know if this is cost prohibited, but it might be possible just to get a drop safe that has an electronic enter key that logs in everybody. So instead of keeping a physical log, whether if someone to get into it, it's going to keep track of who's getting into it and who's not.
I don't
Just
know
a
if
suggestion.
you guys want to talk to what we've got going on.
Okay, so we do actually have a pilot going at one of our schools that has a digital combination lock that does track. It is approximately, I think, $1,200 per safe. So if you multiply that times your 180,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not necessarily something that we're not going to do, but it is something we're piloting right now at a school.
Okay, are there any other further questions or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve this report.
Motion to accept the report.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? All opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Passed unanimously. All right, item 5.2, special review of missing change funds at the Hokie Middle Senior High School.
Same school, different situation. This occurred 3 months after the other report. The accounting department was training the new treasurer, and during that training, they were working with her to teach her on the change fund procedures, and they called for the change fund to be returned in from athletic department. And that was when the trainer discovered that there appeared to be money missing from the change fund, and we were contacted. We did another unannounced cash count where we went out, checked the change fund. There was 2 different types of discrepancies. There was $475 approximately missing from the athletic change fund that had been assigned to the athletic department. The change fund for the school itself is a total of $3,500, and there was $1,000 of change fund missing from that unassigned portion that should have still been in the safe. School police again investigated. In this situation, they were not able to determine a specific individual that could be held responsible for the missing money, and there was no charge filed on this one. There was also one of the other issues that we reported in this had to do with, we have an assistant principal who assists with collecting the money when they have very large games out there, their football games, and he will oversee the ticket sellers, and instead of the actual people that have collected the money they fill out their own monies collected reports, he would then turn around, take their monies collected reports, and he would fill out the drop safe log and put it in the safe. So we were losing that chain of custody at that point, which was another one of the issues that the police ran into an issue.
Okay, any further questions or comments? If If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve this report.
Motion to accept the report.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, passed unanimously. Item 5.3, audit of overtime payroll for maintenance and plant operations. Teresa?
Chair, before we move on, could I make a comment?
Sure.
Just on, it just seems like, again, I've been sitting at these board meetings for 2-3 years, and the items that come up the most is the money collection. And I don't, and I know improvements have been made. I'm just not sure what the answer is for everything. I'm hoping that as you continue to look into all these different policies that the school, has, that maybe we can find some other solutions, because, just seems like every meeting there's, and in between, it just, a lot of the investigation and it is because of collecting money collection, and the
Mr. Burke?
Yes, Ms. Manzo, I wouldn't disagree. That seems to be one of, despite our best efforts, and we have added numerous controls over the years, we've reduced, I think, the amount of fraud, but it does seem like, at least once a year or so, we get hit with one of these things where, the temptation or whatever has gotten the best of somebody that works at one of our school sites. One thing that has come out of this COVID-19 crisis is that our efforts, for years, we've been trying to get away from cash. This has really given us a little bit of a additional incentive to get rid of cash. I mean, nobody even wants to count it at the schools, but because it's not the cleanest thing in the world. So we have kind of taken this opportunity with COVID-19, and Ms. Samuels and her team have heightened our efforts with the schools and the treasurers to take advantage of the online payment, systems that are out there. And Nancy, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yes, in addition, we've had over, last count I think we had over 2,000 online payment options throughout the schools, which was a lot higher than we've had in the past. That all the treasurers are trying to get as many things online as possible. The other thing we're doing is that for sporting events, we have a ticket seller that is online only. They're not selling tickets at the gate. They're not, there's no concessions any longer just due to COVID. So we have really reduced the amount of cash that is flowing through the schools. But of course, you're always going to end up with some cash, because not every parent has a credit card or a debit card or the ability to do it. So cash is not going to go away. I hate to say it, but we are trying our best to reduce it.
And maybe I said, they do the investigations. I guess their policy part is really from, finance side.
It's a partnership. Like we've always worked with the Inspector General to look for opportunities.
Right.
We look at the potential control and the benefit versus the cost of the control, and is it worthwhile?
And I do. I've seen what you all have done, but it's the employees following the process seems to be a challenge. And maybe back to the training, I know they do initial training, but maybe that's where they need to do.
They have annual training.
And it's annual? Wow. Okay.
One of the things that we are looking at is trying to do some training from the actual auditors that are going out to the schools, having them come out and speak. And also I wanted to speak to the PTA members, the boosters, the sponsors, because a lot of times, a lot of this is out of the control of the school, where a parent is helping, and the school can tell the parent, this is the rules, this is what you're supposed to do, and then when the parent doesn't, they're kind of caught. So I think that a lot of it is a lot of times people don't understand why the internal controls are, and when they don't have an understanding, they have a tendency to kind of ignore them. Or don't follow them as carefully as they should, and you're always going to have theft. That's nature of the business. But we are definitely working together with the CFO and the Treasury to, try to do some little additional training, little hands-on. But again, there's a lot of issues with having too much training. And, we don't want to inundate people too.
You probably have these type of scenarios where it's high rotation. A lot of people are just doing it one time. And, so they're not going to get trained. They're going to get trained once, and they're technically not going to really know how to handle all those controls. And you might have someone in charge that's repeatedly doing it, but you might have a lot of people just, doing it one time or two times, and then a new person's doing it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of volunteers that the schools are trying to hold accountable, but you can't always, a parent, is getting money and, thank God you don't have the concession stand anymore. But they have limited on how they can stop the parent from not filling out the receipts, and they tell them to, but there's no detention.
All good comments. Okay, you're up. Yeah. Oh,
James Campbell?
yeah.
Thank you.
Is there a comment? Go ahead.
Yes, but I just want to say from the school's perspective, we definitely would prefer to go cashless as much as possible. But I will say that just this year, we had an increase in the fees for the cashless schools. And it's kind of, although we're getting pushed towards a lack of cash, the fact that the processing fees are more expensive on every transaction is kind of a limiting factor there. And it deters some people from wanting to go in that route. I think we're paying 3.75% now on a transaction. And, if you're doing a small ticket, it's annoying to have to pay that. But some of these other fees where we're paying a higher amount, it becomes, just an additional cost. So if there's any way to look for a less expensive solution, we'll definitely jump on board on the schools. But the current one is kind of deterring people from using it.
Thank you. Any further comments? If not, we'll go on to the next. Yes.
Is there, Mr. Chair, is there a cost associated with going cashless at the schools? Now, is the school board or the school site absorbing? I mean, I know they're one and the same, but who's going to be responsible for absorbing that cost?
Depends on what the fee is. It depends on which fee it is. We are absorbing some of them, and the schools are absorbing some of them.
So could that be a challenge for some of the schools to remain cash?
It's a 1% change in what we were charged, we were being charged before. We hadn't had an increase in our fees in 10 years. So all of a sudden, we had a renegotiation of our contract, and they finally increased our fees. We're not paying anything above market. We actually have a very good rate. It's not I don't believe it's 3.75. I thought it was 3.25, but for each transaction.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Next.
Okay, good morning.
Can't hear you.
We performed an audit of maintenance and plant operations overtime payroll based on our annual audit plan. And we reviewed the controls over the administration of overtime in the maintenance and plant operations department. And we had the following 4 conclusions. Number 1, we determined that general overtime payroll controls appeared adequate. And we analyzed the maintenance and plant operations payroll and their timekeeping records, and we checked for the following 5 items. Unusual overtime hours, trends for missed or incorrect time clock punches, exempt or non-exempt employees who are not classified properly, exempt employees who incorrectly received any overtime or compensatory time, and also any unusual access rights to PeopleSoft timekeeping records. We didn't find any unusual overtime-related activities or material internal control weaknesses during the time period of our review, except for the fact that overtime was not always being approved as is required, and the monitoring of overtime, and these items are discussed in our other conclusions. Okay? Management concurred with our comment. The second comment was that overtime was not always pre-approved prior to maintenance employees working the extra time. On school board policy 6.12 and the maintenance procedure MPO WO 011 requires that the appropriate administrator and supervisor pre-approve the overtime. And we sampled the forms used by the employees to obtain this pre-approval, and we found that overtime was not always pre-approved. And supervisors didn't consistently ensure these pre-approval forms were submitted, completed, and signed, okay? And so to improve operational effectiveness and efficiency, we recommended that the maintenance department consider the cost benefit of automating the overtime pre-approval form, and if automated, certain fields should be required to be completed in the form prior to submission, so that it couldn't be incomplete. Management concurred with our comment and is working with IT. Our third comment was that there was significant overtime expenses were incurred, and our audit found that many maintenance and plant operations employees received significant amounts of overtime pay compared to their annual salary, and that about 12% of the 486 FTE positions were unfilled at the end of fiscal year 2019. We recommended periodic monitoring of employee overtime and staffing levels. And management concurred, and they stated that prior to COVID, maintenance and plant operations had more than 60 vacancies, but lost some of these vacant positions due to COVID budget reductions. They stated that the closing of schools due to COVID allowed overtime to drop significantly as staff was able to complete work while campuses were unoccupied. However, they stated that due to the number of vacancies, routine work orders are now not being done timely and become emergencies. Maintenance does not anticipate requesting additional positions until all vacancies have been filled, however. Our final comment was that there was unreliable data in Tririga. Okay? Some of the employees were either not entering or they're incorrectly entering their hours into Tririga work order time logs. And as a result, the data in the Tririga report that is used for the monitoring of the work hours and staff performance is unreliable. So we recommended that supervisors ensure that employees accurately input their hours into the Tririga work order time logs. And we also recommended that the reports used to monitor labor hours should contain accurate data so they can be relied on for management decisions. The management concurred and stated that they are committed to improving the entry of overtime into Tririga. And to accomplish this, they will send all approved overtime to the maintenance call center representatives. And the following week, they will verify that each technician entered their time properly in Tririga and notify the managers of any exceptions. And that's it for that report.
Well, I can certainly understand maybe significant overtime if they have a shortage of people, but I guess my question is, what time period was covered in this report?
It was mostly fiscal year 2019, and that's what the time of the overtime,
right,
significant overtime covered.
Questions, comments? Mark?
Yeah, I have a comment, and this would apply, I guess, to any audit of overtime payroll. This is probably narrower in scope, but is there any review of looking at overtime of employees in their last 2 to 5 years of retirement to see about misappropriation? Because that would be a concern, because it's an incentive to misappropriate in the last 5 years before retirement. I don't know if that's looked at or not.
We did consider that. Maybe, I don't know if Stacy wants to respond to that, but we did look and see that the positions are people that have been there for a long time, and since there are all these vacancies in that department, those are the experienced personnel, and we did, an overall review, but there's no way to not give these people the overtime because they're the ones who are experienced in the trade, so.
Are they also the same people that are in charge of finding to fill these positions?
I can jump in for a second. We've been actively trying to fulfill our vacancies for probably the last 2 or 3 years. We've worked with several different sources, and what happens is we lose people with institutional knowledge that, 30 years in the district, and you hire somebody new, they don't have that institutional knowledge. So there's a learning curve for new people that we bring on. We have temporary agencies that are helping us right now that we're trying to use as a filter to get people to apply with our district. It's just been an ongoing battle for hiring for the last couple of years for us. And the wave is going out, like we're losing people every year. And there was a gap that we had, maybe it was like right during the recession where we didn't hire any young tradespeople to come in. So you have a bunch of knowledgeable older staff that are going to be retiring, and then you have this gap, and then you have a bunch of young people. So we're going to have a struggle here probably for the next five years or more unless we get more people in, and we're having a hard time hiring.
Okay.
Andre, do you have any questions or comments?
I have one. Is this during this? This appears to take place during the same time period as the sales tax amendment that has passed. So, are these employees trying to get some work done at the school site during this sales tax component, the additional 1 cent sales tax?
My overtime and my operations is separate from the sales tax money. The sales tax money is doing deferred maintenance on large projects, and we're still managing all the other schools with ongoing maintenance issues.
Thank you.
And we did make sure there was a Tririgo work order for the hours. That was part of our review, that there was a valid work order for it.
Deborah, Debbie, do you have any questions?
I could, just being a manager of a municipality, I mean, I understand and I've dealt with these issues myself. What I've tried to do, it really is vital to have a good supervisor that assigns the workload, and I'm not going to sit here and tell anyone how to do their jobs, the school district has. But, and also, I mean, employees will go to a job site and forget tools and have to go back. I mean, there's so many inefficiencies that happen also, in these positions that that's how we've tried to bring down the overtime. It's just trying to assign things. And I'm sure you do the same thing, don't get me wrong, but just trying to hold employees more accountable for their work and getting the correct equipment to even go to an assigned job site, which, those type of things to bring some more efficiency so it does not end up in just more time than what's needed. But I get it,
Well, just to speak to that a little bit, we have 350 employees and roughly 300 of them are field personnel. We take care of 31 million square feet, and our district, as you know, is larger than the state of Rhode Island. Our zones are, throughout the county, we have 12 zones. We have people spread out, and they all have management staff. I don't really believe that that's an issue. It does probably occur, but we are short-staffed, significantly short-staffed.
And I did see that, that you have 12% of, your workforce, and that is going to generate overtime. And in fact, there could be a savings in other areas because now you're not paying the benefits for, health insurance and all those other benefits of another employee. So usually it balances itself out. Thank you.
Kathy?
The other thing to consider, the age of some of our buildings we're getting there. And what I found for the most part with the gentlemen and the ladies that were working on maintenance is they got into a job and got into in the middle of it, and it was larger than what they had anticipated. And it wasn't because anybody was dilly-dallying or not doing their job or had forgotten tools or whatever it was. It's just the nature of what needed to be done took a lot longer than anticipated. And I can say that pretty much with good conscience because as a principal, I helped, I was there. I was, I'd walk back and forth and in and out to see what they were doing. And there was never any time that I would say that I had to call a supervisor to say that time was being wasted. So I think we need to consider that also in light of just maintaining our buildings the way we need them to be fixed. And when I called somebody and said I needed restrooms fixed now because I needed it, they were there in a minute, and whatever time it took to get it done, they did that. Also, too, I think we have to consider about the overtime is sometimes it's on weekends, sometimes something will blow at night because I was called out many times where a pipe had blown somewhere and I had to help let a gentleman in to help stop the water flow at 2:00 in the morning. So I think that maybe could complete the picture for the rest of the people on our committee to understand not the magnitude, because I know you do, but the intricacies of what maintenance does for us.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. Michael?
Just as a question to start my comments on, you've listed in the background 3 departments with the most overtime for these 2 fiscal years. For these 2 fiscal years. Maintenance and plant was selected. Why was that one selected with the least amount of overtime? Anyone have a comment on that?
Well, I know that we did do the school police prior year. We did do school police in fiscal year 2020.
Well, this is 2020, 2019, right?
Yeah, with the prior overtime report we did was school police.
So
We
that
did
was
school police.
2018 and 19, maybe?
Yeah, probably. And then, but transportation has been a while, and we do hope to do some more payroll.
Yeah, it's 3 times as much as the one you did in this report, the overtime, in transportation. I'm just wondering why that was selected, and if it was with each year you take one, that's fine. I'm just trying to understand that.
Let me ask Randy, this was before my time, and see if Randy Law can speak to it as far as the audit director.
Sure.
Like Ellen said, that because we just finished the audit of the transportation and school police recently. That's why we switched to another department, the top 3, to look at the maintenance department. So it's on a rotational basis on this type of audit.
I don't. Yeah. Could you say that again, please?
Yeah, because we said, if you look at page 3 of the report.
Page 3?
Yeah, you can see the footnote under table 1. We had an audit of the school police department completed just this, actually it's performed during fiscal year 2020 or 19. So it's very recent. And then another one is transportation is again a year before. So these 2 departments already covered it recently. That's why we go to the maintenance department this time.
Are you saying every 3 years you're rotating? Is that the bottom line?
Actually, it's not really to rotate because of what we have done so far. And then we didn't find much of the other issues. They are correcting the issues we identified it in the past. So we go to another department to see for the compliance also. So we may go back to those other departments later.
Yeah, okay.
It's just that the transportation and the school police were already done. They're either currently being done or they were done probably in the last 3 years. So they picked a new department to look at.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah. Not only that, we also
clarity. That's all I'm trying to do.
Yeah. Not only that, we also do a 6-month follow-up on all our findings, how they implemented the corrective actions and what's the status, so on. So, like Mr. Bymester said, we completed the other 2 audits already.
Okay.
We are in an ongoing monitoring of the progress too.
Okay. Thank you. The second comment I have in this report is that I don't know how you say this, Triega, the system?
Triega.
With the lack of, I want to know what the supervisors are doing here. everybody talks about the employees not complying and not filling in their reports. Isn't there a report a supervisor is supposed to be doing? To review that they're doing what they're supposed to be? Why do we have supervisors if our employees aren't complying in that section?
Hey, Stacy, can you answer the question?
Yeah, we have a call center that runs reports, and they've been looking to make sure that the employees are putting in their time for the week, but they don't know if the employee is working overtime to double check it. So now that we've got this audit finding, the call center is going to be notified so they make sure that the reports are being accurately filled out.
They weren't doing it, but
I'm running a report to make sure that the work was entered into Tririga. I said it wrong, sorry.
Is this system electronic?
Yes.
So wouldn't it be the employee fills it out, and then the supervisor goes in, approves it, and then it goes?
No, they're not approving it. That's what this report says.
So how is, if the supervisor's not approving it, how is payroll paying their check?
The payroll, the overtime reports are not in Tririga. The overtime authorization reports have nothing to do with Tririga. It's completely separate. Tririga is a time collecting device for work orders.
Tririga is for the work orders that create the overtime, and the PeopleSoft system is the system of record for all the overtime. But they're using this Tririga report to monitor employee performance, and the hours weren't being entered into Tririga, so any kind of monitoring report was incorrect they were using.
But it should probably be set up, you have, whichever way it's set up, you have a time log, 40 hours plus, and then you have the overtime. The supervisor approves that, and then it gets sent to payroll. If there's no approval from the supervisor, then the overtime shouldn't be paid.
Doesn't work.
In the real world, right?
Yeah, Nancy?
Sorry.
Nancy?
Yeah, the Tririga is not our payroll system. This is just something they're entering in addition to whatever else they're doing to manage their time. Employees are clocking in using a time collection device, a biometric time collection device. That is what is tracking their payroll. So there is no interface from Tririga to PeopleSoft.
Well, maybe that's what we should learn from this audit here. That could be going on in a lot of places, right?
Right, but it seems to be very difficult.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure it is.
So,
the last comment on this report, last comment. Significant overtime expenses occurred. This is page 9. I don't know if this is a big deal or not, but you give percentages of employees earning overtime as it relates to their base salary. 9% earn 30 more, 6% earn 40 more than base, and only 3% more earn more than 50. I don't know if that's a big deal or not. However, when you have base salaries and people are used to overtime as part of their compensation, that total compensation is what they're used to making. And I think that should be understood here, that maybe we should think about that for overtime. People are used to getting that in their paycheck. And that's what you say here. Now, 3% is not a big deal, but 50% more in base salary. Guy's making 60, or a gal's making 60, get 30, that's 90, that's a nice salary. It's a nice salary, they're used to that. And if they go back to their base at 60, they're in trouble. So that was the third part of this that I picked out of this audit, that's all.
That would be something that would be a good indicator to look at and track to see, especially if we have any changes and follow-ups. If you have somebody that has a decrease or increase in their base salary, does it affect their overtime? It shouldn't, the overtime should be the overtime, depending on whatever the work is. That would be good.
I'm not stating that overtime's not important.
No.
That's not the point here. But it should be, there should be some quantification of that and some supervision of people that are approving the payroll for overtime.
Most agreeably. That can be something that's very easily abused, and,
Sure.
you know.
Especially if the system isn't your payroll system, right?
Well, the payroll system, Trirega's the work order system. But the payroll, like Ms. Samuel says, we do have time clocks that are capturing to make sure people are actually working the hours. The department has access to reports to help monitor overtime. So I think it does just come down to the supervision and making sure that the time worked is warranted and that the work's being assigned to staff, without favoritism or, it's trying, like Mr. Bymaster made an excellent point, is there a pattern where we see people approaching retirement deliberately trying to boost their highest 5 years of salary so that it'll, have a lifetime benefit through their pension?
But I think in certain fields, it's going to make sense. This trade field it's going to make sense. There's a gap between, that's happening probably all over the country, a gap between the ages of the people that are doing the work and how they can find people to do the work, to fill the positions.
I agree. And the shortage of staff within the maintenance department is Ms. Marshall's absolutely right with her comments. They are struggling to fill vacancies, and she's got to leverage the people that are available to her, so.
Abby?
Yeah, just one question as a follow-up. It's in the process. Who approves the overtime prior to it being worked? It's not the point of when it gets to payroll, because by that time, they've already worked it. You have to pay them. FMLA, you're required to. But who is approving the overtime work before it's done?
The supervisor bills out.
And is that being done?
Well, they didn't pre-approve, that was one of our comments.
So to me, there's your area that
Needs
you need
improvement.
to.
Needs improvement.
Stacy, would you like to speak to that since you're the...
Yeah, there's area managers that approve the work, and then it goes to my general manager who does the final approval. And that's part of the overtime finding and doing a better job of reviewing them before they work. And we're working with IT to get this 1970 form, so it's digitally sent in, so it's not lost in the process.
Thank you.
Okay, further discussion? Yeah, Mike?
And within this year's, we did have some hurricanes, which puts a lot of extra work on Stacy's team. And with school police as well, like when we open up hurricane shelters, we've got officers, staged there that are working around the clock. And then in the aftermath, maintenance is, working around the clock to clear our campuses and get schools reopened. So I think in 2019 we had two storms. But anyway, that's part of our reason for overtime in certain years.
Okay, any further discussion? If not, I'll accept the motion to approve this report.
Motion to accept the report.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? All
Aye.
opposed? Passed 6-0, unanimous. Okay, next is item 6.1, Teresa, the update on the internal funds report.
As you can see, this is pretty self-explanatory. We went in that we've already accomplished quite a bit on the internal funds counts. Those are ongoing, and we are on track to complete. We have not found anything that is extraordinarily of concern yet. We are seeing some repeat findings, but there are also some issues with the closing of COVID and the rapid closing that were some challenges for the schools. They were basically told to pack up and get their stuff out. So there's some issues, and also the bookkeepers and treasurers are having to do double duty at the schools. So we've been, trying to not add more to them by the audit, but to be considerate of the stress that the school administrators are on. But we're on track, and as of yet, I don't believe we've had anything that is earth-shattering or headline-worthy yet.
Good. Any comments? If not, we'll go to the RSM presentation. Brett and Chantel.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Again, Brett Friedman, with a partner with RSM. In Section 7, you should have 3 reports from us, and I'm just going to briefly walk you through each of those. In addition to that, obviously, you have this much larger report, the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report that's presented, prepared by the CFO's office in accounting. But if we could just start first with 7.1A, it's just certain required communications that us as the external auditors have with you, the individuals charged with governance. And just going to briefly walk through those. First, that we did the audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards and government auditing standards, also in accordance with our professional service contract dated March 16, 2017, and our annual audit arrangement letter dated August 26, 2020. At the beginning of the audit, we provided a synopsis of the scope and timing. The one key thing I want to point out here is, given what's going on, the entire audit was performed virtually. No issues at all. Timing met the normal timing. I just want to thank Mike, Nancy, Heather, Leanne, and Christy and their teams, because it was a seamless process, even though virtual, very good back and forth and very smooth working through it. Going down as far as accounting policies and practices, one of the things, fortunately, that happened that GASB did, given what was going on, is they pretty much postponed all new standards. GASB State 95 came in and pushed everything back. So there were no new standards this year. You do have a couple of major ones coming up in the future, GASB 84, which will change how fiduciary funds are handled, and also GASB 87, which addresses accounting and reporting for leases. So those are coming up, but I will tell you, the district already is way ahead and prepared with GASB 84. Going on the communications, there were no significant unusual transactions, nothing in the area that lacked authoritative guidance. I will briefly point out to you the significant accounting estimates. We always like to point that out to those charged with governance, because a lot of what happens within the district is either cash received or cash paid, but the areas that could be most manipulated and therefore have fraud or risk is estimates, so we will just point out the major estimates to you. One important thing to point out is during the audit, there were no audit adjustments made to the original trial balance. I point that out because that should give you confidence in the quality of the work done by the accounting team. We do look hard. We look through a lot of transactions, really beat things up, and that we had no adjustments should give you confidence when you're getting reports from Mike and Nancy and the team that they're in good shape. Also, we had no uncorrected misstatements as part of the audit, no disagreements with management over the application of GAAP or accounting principles, no consultations with other auditors, no significant issues that came up this year. The only significant difficulty, again, was working 100% virtual, but that went smoothly and we're right on time. We presented drafts at this meeting. Once we're concluded and you're good, we're prepared to go ahead and issue final reports. In the package, which I'll touch on, in addition to our opinion on the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, we also issue an opinion on internal control over financial reporting and compliance and other matters based on an audit performed in accordance with government auditing standards, and also an independent auditor's report on compliance for each major federal program, report on internal control over compliance, and a report on scheduled expenditures of federal awards as required by OMB uniform guidance. Also included in this package is a copy of the management representation letter. That summarizes all the key representations made to us during the audit. On page 3 of the document, that's where we have the significant accounting estimates. There I'll just point out some of the major ones to you. The first one is the accounting for other post-employment benefits, the annual required contribution, the total post-employment benefits, and the deferral amounts are all required to be reported in accordance with GASB 75. Management, with input from its OPEB actuary, prepares and reports those amounts. We have our own actuarial specialists come in and take a look at the actuarial report. They look at it for the reasonableness of the assumptions, consistency, and application of methodology, and we found no issues or concerns there. Similarly, also, we look at the Florida Retirement System annual actuarial report as well. We look at the assumptions used by them. In that case, the district relies on the state. Our consulting actually looks at it and same thing, no concerns with the assumptions or the methodology. The next item is the actuarial assumptions used for self-insurance. There as well, the district is self-insured for general auto liability, workers' comp, health insurance. With the help of an actuary, they calculate the estimates for both what's been incurred and also the incurred but not reported. We have our own actuarial consultants that are part of our team that they look at the loss development factors, they look at the methodologies applied, and they advise whether or not they feel the amounts are reasonable. Again, we looked at that underlying supporting data, and we had no concerns as far as the reasonableness of that information. There's another estimate dealing with capital assets that's not as significant. So moving to item 7.1B, this one is the single audit reports in accordance with the uniform guidance. And what I like to do to make this easy to kind of walk through, if you jump to the back of the report to page 8, it provides a very nice summary of all the results of the audit. So just give you a second to get there, and then we'll kind of talk through that page. So page 8 of the report. Sorry, Joyce, I know I'm going a little fast, but I'll give you a minute. Yep.
It's the report that's labeled single audit report?
It's a little further down to it, yeah.
Okay.
Should be after that one.
Oh, the single audit
Yeah,
report?
yeah.
Hold on, this is the wrong one. Hold on.
Okay.
Sorry, guys. Okay,
And then page 8.
okay. Let me just get that old. Okay. Page 8.
Yep,
Sorry.
no problem.
Okay, there we go.
One more.
One more?
Yep. One more after that. You got it right there. Okay. So page 8 provides a nice convenient summary of independent audit results. First, most importantly, want to point out that with regard to the financials, which is the comprehensive annual financial report, we are prepared to issue an unmodified opinion. You know, that indicates that the financial statements are fairly stated in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. It just indicates that the report has been properly prepared. Also, significance and importance is with regard to internal controls of financial reporting, we can report to you that there are no material weaknesses and no significant deficiencies, and also no non-compliance. That will tell you again with regard to accounting and financial reporting, we found no issues with the internal controls applied by management. In addition, we performed a single audit. The district received just under $200 million in federal awards. With regard to the single audit, we look at both compliance and internal controls. There, as well as far as internal controls, there were no material weaknesses and no significant deficiencies, and also no non-compliance noted. We're prepared to issue an unmodified opinion on the major federal programs. The major federal programs are determined each year using a risk-based approach, which focuses on the size and the nature of the programs and whether or not they've been audited before. The 3 programs that were identified as major this year and subjected to testing were the Child Nutrition Cluster, the 21st Century Community Learning Centers, and also the Disaster Grants Public Assistance that's FEMA dealing with, like Hurricane Irma and the other storms. The dollar threshold used to determine is $3 million, and that's based on the total federal expenditures of $200 million. Also, the district did qualify as a low-risk auditee in this year. Going on to page 9, there were no financial statement findings or no federal award findings to point out. I will take you to page 10 next. Yeah. Page 10, there was one finding issued last year when the Audit General did their report. I'll point out that finding is related to the reporting of charter schools. Now, that's something that, this school district, as well as Miami-Dade and some of the other large districts like Orange County, they have all reviewed and applied GAAP with regard to component units and have determined that the charter schools do not meet the requirements for inclusion. We've reviewed that. We don't have a problem with management's position. We know the Auditor General, they have issued this comment before, but again, it's, that's something that's more a preference by the Auditor General versus, GAAP as applied by management. Again, it's done here, it's done by Miami-Dade, done by Orange County. Yes, Michael.
Can I ask a question about that for a minute?
Sure.
Just to bring me back in the life of what we're talking about here. The charter school issue was always that they did their own financial reports?
Yes,
Is that
and
what we're
they had
talking
their own
about here?
board of,
And then they get, all these different auditors are auditing different charter schools, and that's what we accept?
Right.
That's what you're talking about now?
That they have their own reports and also that they're not included in these financials
Correct.
that you
Okay.
have.
Okay.
Because they're
Got it.
separate,
Thank
yes.
you. Thanks.
Yep.
Thanks.
So, outside of that, again, that's it with regard to the federal audit. The last thing I'll point to is, and this just speaks to controls, is the management letter. Typically, if there are internal control findings, you have 3 levels of severity. A material weakness is something that is really bad that needs to be addressed immediately. Significant deficiencies, that intermediate level. Management letter is where we would make recommendations for improvement. And again, in this case, we had nothing that rose to the to the level of reporting here. So with that, I'll take any questions on the audit itself. Again, just want to thank Nancy, Mike, and the team. They did a very efficient job working with us, and we appreciate it. Mike?
Yeah, I would like to go on record. I think that's a great job. Great job, people. Great job. Question on you. If it was a total 100%, this is relative to where we are today in life. If it was 100% virtual audit this year, June 30, 2020, how did you audit inventory?
Well, in this case, we have methodologies for virtually auditing inventory. In this case, it's not a material item to the financials here, but we do have methods to do 100% virtual for inventory.
If you do it.
Yes.
But you didn't do it.
We didn't have to here, no.
Okay. Is there a comment that you have to make about that? Or is it just because you think it's immaterial?
Right, yeah, just...
Okay, just
yeah.
asking, just asking.
Yep.
Second question, relative to your audit this year. How did you address any cybersecurity issues?
Well, one of the things we do every year, we do IT general control testing, and we do analysis. We don't go in and do a deep dive penetration testing. We do have those capabilities, but what we do is we have a number of inquiries. We met with Mr. Talley, we met with the superintendent, with various people throughout the district. If we see any potential issues or concern, we'd bring it to them and advise that. As an example, we just did penetration testing for Miami-Dade schools as well recently.
But my question is, did you do any testing? You talked about it internally with different people. That's fine. Is that the extent of your service in this engagement?
With regard, because cybersecurity, the thing is, we look at the general controls around the school district's accounting system. So we look at security and access. But when you talk cybersecurity, typically what you're looking at there is doing penetration or vulnerability testing, and that would be something to be outside the scope of the audit.
That's fine. Okay.
I would say we have done that outside penetration testing periodically over the years, and we're also subject to the Florida Auditor General comes in and does it. They did an IT audit this past year.
They do it.
Yeah, they do it on a rotational basis, about every 3 years.
And you don't recommend any further evaluation of the entire system of the school district for any potential cyber. The reason why I'm asking is because I've had several cases recently, because everybody's outside working. All these systems in their homes are being attacked, and they're backdooring the main systems. And that's becoming, we're gonna hear a lot of things about this 12 months from now about what's happening. And that's why I'm asking you now, because I think I would like to recommend on this committee that somebody think about this issue with respect to our school district and everybody outside. Because you got probably 95% of your people working outside now. And it's a real problem because these systems at home, when you're sitting at your kitchen table, they're not protected at all. And we have to be very focused on that, I think, going forward. That's all. My only comment on that.
Just,
I'm not saying there's anything wrong.
No, but I just want to say that actually the Inspector General's office a few years ago had a recommendation that the district hire a dedicated director of security, and we've done that, and we've continued to build that department, add resources, and we'll have a closed-door session with our board on December 9th, just because it's a sensitive topic, but I can tell you that we put a lot of resources into that area, and you're never finished, right? There's always the next upgrade to kind of stay one step ahead.
Especially today.
Yes.
It's different than 2 years ago.
The remote work assignments, there are protections in place, but we've had that, we do have systems that allow the people to work, if you can go through a browser, you can get in. But anyway.
Okay. Just a thought.
Yeah, we'd welcome, we're always looking to improve in that area and just, try to.
That is an area that we have identified for our work plan, and we are working towards that as well. We understood that with the increase in funding as far as with the technology, with everything being remote, we knew that this was going to be an issue, and we're working with the school district with that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Mike and Nancy, I want to reflect what Michael Dixon had to say. Congratulations seems like year after year. I don't know how you all do it, but you've obviously got good staff and you follow the instructions and the laws, and I commend both of you and your staffs for an excellent job. And Brent, nice presentation. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I don't know that we need an approval on this, but I'll recommend a motion to accept the report.
And ditto on what everyone else has said, because this is a large district and there is a lot going on here. So to get a clean report like you did, awesome. So congratulations. And with that, I make a motion to accept the report.
Is there a second?
Second.
A second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passed unanimously, 6-0. Okay, the last thing are the investigative reports. These were all sent to you individually. So we'll go on to general comments, and I'll point out in your packets directly behind your minute meetings is the schedule of our meetings for next year. I want to thank all of you, Mark, Leandra, Debbie, Michael, and Kathy virtually for taking the time out of your schedules during these unusual times to meet. And Terry, as always, it's great to have you. And is there any further business? If not, the next tentatively scheduled meeting is for December 18th. I say tentative, if there are not enough items on the agenda to need a meeting, then we will have one. But that's when it tentatively is scheduled. Is there any further business to come before the committee? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Passed
Second.
unanimously. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.